Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today on AmericanaMusic.com, we have the great pleasure of welcoming Mary Lucey from the Appalachian String Band Tanasi. The Ashville Trio mix global folk and bluegrass with rich harmonies and world-class dobro. Their members have performed on well-known stages such as Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center, and the Ryman Auditorium. Tanasi hails seasoned players drawing from old-time classics, creating a brand new sound that hooks you instantly. We're excited to have Mary on the show with us today. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here.
Mary, I just started listening to y'all's stuff. I saw some of the videos that you guys did out of Colorado on your website. I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, who are these guys? Because there's a mixture of bluegrass. You can hear the folk. On your website, there's a myriad of influences that you guys talk about having. Can you talk a little bit about the band's background and those world folk influences?
I grew up in a really eclectic family. My dad had a great record collection, and I had older siblings, mostly raised on Willie Nelson, Billie Holiday, and Irish drinking song, Madonna, and then that all morphed into the Grateful Dead and Bob Dylan and all the great songwriters. In high school, I started my own band, and it was really creative. At one point, we had 2 drummers and keys, and we would write our own song. When I got into college, I was studying biology, but I was able to take this African drumming and dance class every semester.
Oh.
This wonderful woman by the name of Michelle Kislyak, who had spent a lot of time in Central Africa and Ghana, was able to change the curriculum around just enough each semester that we could continue to take it for credits. It was a win for all of us who got to be involved in that. We got to work with musicians from Africa that she would bring over. So that was really an amazing experience. And at the same time, I was volunteering at this little coffee house music venue called the Prism with an M, not an N. I used to always say that I was volunteering at the Prism, and my parents thought I was volunteering. Charlottesville, Virginia. Fred Boyce, who is just a brilliant songwriter, banjo player, and lover of music from around the world. Such a great job curating a wide variety of musicians that he would bring in, and even if you only had 20 minutes available on a weekend, you could stop in as a volunteer and catch any of it. My first show actually there was Norman Blake and Tony Wright. So that was one that stood with me for the rest of my life. That also reminds me, I went to something called Nature Camp when I was growing up. There was the wonderful banjo player, Carrie Fridley. She's also an amazing singer and songwriter. And so at night, we would be entertained by these women singing us to sleep and playing banjo, and we had square dances. So that was my first introduction to Appalachian music. I got a lot of that when I was in college. I got more curious about all of that music. And then I got into Indian music through my husband. I wish he were here to speak for himself because he's got an interesting story. When he was about 3.5 years old, his mom would have to pull him off of the piano for dinner and then pull him off the piano again for bedtime. He just loved it so much, loved to practice, and would put in hours and hours a day. Instead of collecting baseball cards, he had a real interest in world music and roots music. Would go to record stores, try to collect as many records from around the world.
Wow.
In high school, played in bands. It would be the guy that put in 10 hours of practice a day. Developed his own unique sound that when I first heard him play, I remember just laughing a lot because it was so creative. His phrasing, no matter what instrument he picks up, I can tell it's him playing it. Learned everybody's stuff. He transcribed all the jazz greats. He transcribed all the dobro greats, transcribed all the piano, classical music. He never wanted to try to sound like any of them. When we were in our early 20s, he had found a black and white cassette at this music shop. And I remember him calling to and saying, you got to come check this guy out. He's from another planet. I came running in. It was Debashish Bhattacharya, who is a master slide guitar player from India, who won the President of India Award when he was only 13 years old, known as the most technically advanced slide player in the world. My husband points out it's not that he's the best at this or whatever, because it's not worth using those types of adjectives with music, but he is the most technically advanced musician. And so this was before the internet, and somehow he figured out he was playing up in New York City. So he traveled up there and stayed for a month in the teacher's house,
Uh-huh.
had the room right next to him, and started learning slide guitar from him. That was where he learned techniques that he has since been able to put on the dobro and other slide instruments that have allowed him to take the dobro into uncharted territories. He went and studied there, and then he and I went to India and studied. And I was studying Indian classical singing with Devashish's sister, Shudapa. And after that, we just became friends, and we brought them over to the States and did some tours together, sharing cooking and sharing music. And
So, is Billy your husband?
yeah, sorry.
Oh, I did not realize that Billy. Then you started talking about slide, and I was like, oh, wait, Billy.
Carnegie.
Yes, yes. He's phenomenal. I mean, I know you know that, but but our audience should know that. I love dobro. It's just one of my favorite instruments, and man, he's so good. He's so good.
For sure.
And then the other member is, Anya Hinkle.
It's funny, we all have biology background.
Really?
Yeah, and Anya, she got her PhD in ethnobotany. She spent a lot of time over in Polynesia.
Okay, wait, back it up. Because I am going to say that when I was preparing for this interview, my vocabulary expanded. So you said ethnobotany?
Yeah, that is the study of different cultures through plants.
Wild.
Yeah.
That is cool.
I could tell you better than I'm, looking at the different plants that people eat and use for medicine, and how those threads of information get passed on through generations and into different cultures.
Wow. How interesting. I've always been a big believer of your surrounding environment and the influence it has on you in so many ways that you don't even realize.
Yeah. So she did that for quite a while, and then started falling in love with playing music and writing songs. She's from Southwestern Virginia. We're all actually grew up in Virginia. So she started getting into old time music in Blacksburg. And then her world travels, she's always had a deep love for Japanese culture, and she's actually married to a Japanese man, and she's fluent in Japanese.
Oh, cool.
He's made a big effort to go over every year and spend at least a few weeks traveling, playing music, just spending time immersed in the culture. And she's written some really beautiful books. I think they're called, are they zines?
I don't know.
He's always had a love of travel as well. That is something that we all bonded on, was our love of spending time in different countries and meeting musicians, getting together and playing. Been times where we haven't been able to speak the same language, but we can sit down and play for hours. We didn't really mean to at first to make our band have that focus. It just sort of happened naturally that was what music we were working on at the time when we started as a trio. Billy and I had just recently gotten back from Nepal, and we've been spending a lot of time in Hawaii. Billy's been playing at the Hawaiian Steel Guitar Festival over there every year, and I've been going over and playing bass and singing some in Hawaiian. So it just happens to be this time in our lives. We're doing a whole lot of that, trying to weave it in between our work. I'm actually a nurse.
I am too.
Oh, cool. Are you still practicing?
Yes, my specialty is skilled and long-term care, but mostly skilled nursing.
So we're just trying to get out and play as much as we can. And we've realized one of the important things I think that we've gotten excited about just being able to share is how similar a lot of the music is between different countries and their roots music. Like while we were visiting Nepal, we learned a bunch of their traditional songs, and we're shocked at how similar a lot of them. They sound like old time tunes. When we were in India, we learned some of their traditional stories, songs. Just how wonderful it is. It sort of is the same thing with nursing, where the more people you meet and get to know, you realize we have so much more in common.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things we need to be celebrating. And all this bullshit about being different and focusing on that is such a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to live in that realm. And it seems like social media feeding off of that and trying to take up our precious time, hooking us into that narrative. In reality, community and music and celebrating the beauty of life. And for us, it's being outdoors here in Western North Carolina, that we have the choice of what we're going to focus on and just help us all remember what's important.
I think, too, there's something about when you're a musician or songwriter, there's something that nursing gives you this vantage point of empathy for people and understanding that I'm sure there are other jobs or mediums where you would get that, but it really does that, I think.
Absolutely. And it's one of the greatest privileges to have that level of intimacy with people, such a quick way to really get to the heart of people. I spent over 7 years working in the ICU. You are bonded within minutes with these families. It's powerful. And, music came into and continues to come into my practice as well, whether it's helping during somebody passing,
Yeah.
helping the family get together and pray and sing. And it has a role in all of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to hear about when I saw the name of your band, Tanasi. I'm like, okay, so this is a word that I don't know, and I'm going to look it up. It's a Cherokee word that means bend in the river or the place of meeting. It's also the Tennessee was probably named after Tanasi as well. So can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So when we were coming up with the name, it's always a funny thing to come up with a name for a band. We wanted something that was roots based, and we were looking at different flowers and all sorts of things here in Appalachia. And we realized that to talk about the roots music of this area far predates the Irish and Scottish and African influences of the music that we understand to be Appalachian music. And so we started looking at the Eastern Band of Cherokee names and all those things that you said. And it was the capital of the Eastern Band of Cherokee for a while, was named Tanasi. I contacted the chief and was able to speak to somebody in the office and ask for permission, and we got permission to use the name. It is our way of honoring the people that have been here for a long time.
That's really cool that you called and asked for permission. Like, I don't know, that's really neat.
Yeah, I guess we're learning. With their blessing, it felt right.
So I want to talk about Mahala, that song, Let's Hold On.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, because at first I wasn't quite sure if you were doing mashups, but that wasn't it. It is, but it isn't. So you're writing lyrics over some of these songs that are maybe instrumental. That particular song, the Carolina Chocolate Drops, recorded that song, which they are a Grammy Award-winning black string band that formed in 2006. Can you talk a little bit about that song and putting it together and the lyrics and stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. I love the Carolina Chocolate Drops, but I actually had not heard that version just a couple of years ago. After we had written this song, I was in a coffee shop and it came on and I was like, what? This song? Then I realized it was them, and I absolutely love that band. We learned this from the fella who wrote it. His name is Hannes Kowitsi, and he is a South African musician who plays with a spoon in his mouth, plays guitar, slide, and we played at this camp called All Things Slide and Centrum in Washington State. Billy and I did. And David Cromer, who was an activist during the apartheid musical revolutionary, he was going around sort of like Alan Lomax and finding musicians and recording them and helping bring instruments into villages to help people pass on the music, the next generation. He found Hannes and recorded this song. And then the guy who hosts this camp found the video. It was like in the early days of YouTube and brought him over. This is one of those situations where we couldn't speak the same language. He spoke Afrikaans. But we would play music with him until, the sun came up. We played this song with him several times. My bandmate at the time, I was in a band called the Biscuit Burners, and my bandmate, Odessa Jorgensen, who was with me there, she and I ended up coming up with a counter melody and writing words to accompany the song because we loved it so much, wanted to keep it going. But then it sort of went to rest. We never played it as the Biscuit Burners, and I became a mom and a nurse. And 18 years later, we are out and playing it. So it's really nice to come full circle. We talked with David and got permission from Hannes to put our own words to it and got his blessing. It feels really wonderful to keep that song and that spirit, that memory alive through that song.
That's so neat. That's so neat. Like a melting pot of cultures. Another song that I wanted to talk about was manumission. Am I saying that right?
Oh, yeah.
Another word I learned. Which means the formal act of being released from slavery. Yes, the Hills of Swannanoa. Can you talk a little bit about that song?
Yeah, I'd love to. The first song is an old time song that's in the classic repertoire, but it has a name that we didn't like. It was something about like horrible people called paddle rollers. So we didn't want to be out talking about them. So we renamed it Manumission to reflect something that's a much happier topic. And then The Hills of Swannanoa was a beautiful song that Anya wrote with Akira Satake. He's a Japanese banjo player. He wrote the original melody to it, and then Anya added to it and wrote lyrics to it. It was about the flood of 1916, the great flood that came through here and washed everything away, especially in the Swannanoa River Valley. Little did we know we would end up living through a flood that was actually even worse.
Really? So it was worse. That I know which one you're talking about. How long ago was that?
It was in September of 2024.
Yes.
So that song has taken on an entirely new meaning for us. It's not just that we have to empathize with the people from 100 years ago. We went through it ourselves and lost people and lost property and land. And 60% of our businesses haven't reopened. 40% of our trees are down. It took us a year to get a bridge back on our property to be able to access our house. Kind of impossible to ignore it now.
Yeah.
There was a lot of beautiful things that came out of it, a lot of resiliency, and the phrase restoring my faith in humanity was something that I lived through, and I was overwhelmed with the amount of love and time people poured into our communities, got their boots on and their work gloves, just worked their tails off to try to help bring back some semblance of what it was. We'll be forever grateful for all of that. I think the election was like a month later.
Oh, I remember that.
Nobody had any desire to talk about any of that. Who cares who you're voting for? Need any water? It was a really nice way to remember what's important.
Yeah. The song Get Up, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the other.
Ore mi kinise or Shay?
Yes. It was funny because I was looking for that song and I found it like a MSU percussion ensemble singing the folk song part of it. Can you talk a little bit about that song?
The Yoruba folk chant from Nigeria.
How cool.
Billy thought that it would be cool to use our acoustic string instruments as sort of a polyrhythmic song. So the beginning of it, we filter in as if we're a drum ensemble with different rhythms on our instruments. Anya and I wrote words to it to just sort of having an all-night dance party. It was sort of the vibe that we were going for. Yeah, we had a great time writing that, and it's super fun to play and get people up dancing too when we play it live.
I feel like a lot of your songs are very rhythmic and energetic. They're a lot of fun. I want to ask about the George Harrison song that's on the album as well. Give Me Love. How did you guys decide to do that song? My parents were big Beatles fans. They loved George Harrison, so there was a lot of George Harrison in my house.
Awesome. Yeah, we actually were asked to play that song at one of our dear friends' weddings during the pandemic, bring this into our repertoire. We liked the idea that George Harrison had connections and ties to India, that Billy ends up playing his 22-stringed instrument called a chaturangi. It was designed by Debashish Bhattacharya, his guru, his teacher. It was fun to interlace that to George's song.
Cool.
It adds sort of a little bit of a mystical vibe having the sympathetic strings ring. Anya and I take turns singing. One of my favorite things to do in the world is harmony singing. I have an ear for it, which I think goes back to just singing in church when I was a little kid. I could never sing the actual melody lines would be too high or too low, and so but I wanted to sing, so I would just sing along, but I would sing a harmony line of the whole melody without really realizing what I was doing. And it wasn't until Billy and I started dating where he was just like, dude, how do you hear all this harmony? But I'm trained to do it. When I hear a melody, I usually am simultaneously hearing the harmony to it. So Anya and I have had a lot of fun working up some fun harmonies that aren't quite what you'd expect.
Awesome. Yes, that's definitely a strong point on this album and with your band as well, as those harmonies are they're out of this world. I mean, I love them because the different influences that I feel with the harmonies are not your generic, I don't want to say generic, but your average bluegrass harmony. It's nice. It's really nice. And with the dobro and everything, it's a really beautiful sound. Mary, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody needs to go out and check out Tanasi's debut album. It comes out May 8th.
Thanks for taking your time to talk with me today. It's been great.
It's a wonderful album. I listened to it and I could just listen to you guys all day. It's a really great album.
Thank you so much.
Here's a short clip from next week's interview with 3-time Americana Music UK Award nominee Danny Nichols.
I grew up with a father from England, tall, blue-eyed, blonde, white man. And then my mum is Anglo-Indian, so her parents grew up in India. The history of it, which I'm only just really now just starting to learn and look into, which is fairly complicated with the dates and everything. But basically, for many years, India was colonized by European countries. And there was a melting pot of European countries and European people mixing with the Indian population. And over time, it became this melting pot of cultures. And I mean, I am a melting pot of cultures and musically as well. I love that richness that I grew up with. One side of my family being very British and having British culture and food. And then the other side having a lot of Indian influence, specifically Anglo-Indian influence, which is this little culture, because after independence, that sort of started to change and dissipate. And a lot of people from India went to the Commonwealth countries, England, Australia, Canada. And so it's just this very interesting, very small, short-lived in a big scope of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I grew up, with cuisines and music and culture and history and the stories of India. And I went to India in 2011 with some of my family members, including my grandmother. Got to see where she grew up. It just felt very powerful. Like, oh, this is really rooted and a part of in my history and heritage. And I'm not sure sonically how it's sort of made its way into my music, apart from that American roots music culture that has found its way via India, via Bedford, England. My grandmother used to talk about Nashville and the Grand Ole Opry, and she was just a fan. She was a music fan and she loved everything about it. And so I also love everything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny path that I've taken. Really love it and proud of it. Actually, just coming fresh from a radio interview live on WSM Opry Radio.
Sweet.
I'm still sort of reeling from it because, growing up, hearing about all of that and thinking how proud my grandma would be to know that I just did that. It's just like, I'm sort of full of emotion right now. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to AmericanaMusic.com podcast. Be sure to go to AmericanaMusic.com and find playlists of the Americana artists we've interviewed here. Also, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform.